There are moments in every great man's life when the applause fades, the cameras turn away, and silence becomes the only sound left to hear. For Bill Gates, that silence came after decades of being celebrated as one of the greatest minds of modern history, the man who reshaped how the world uses technology. But behind the polished speeches, billionaire lifestyle, and the endless interviews, there was a side of Gates that few ever saw, a man who sometimes felt utterly alone against the world. It began quietly. After stepping down from Microsoft, Gates devoted himself to philanthropy. He was no longer the fierce CEO who fought for market dominance. Now he was a man on a mission to save the planet. He poured billions into global health, vaccines, and education. But the more he gave, the more people began to question his intentions. Conspiracy theories spread online faster than truth. Social media turned him into a target, calling him everything from a global manipulator to a villain with hidden motives. For someone who had spent his entire life believing in logic, data, and innovation, it was painful to realize that the very world he helped build, the digital one, was now being used against him. The irony was sharp. The internet he once dreamed of as a tool for knowledge had become the weapon that made him misunderstood. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Seattle skyline, Gates sat alone in his quiet home office. The house was vast but eerily silent. The laughter of his children was now distant memories. The warmth of family dinners replaced by the constant hum of computers and the blue glow of screens. He scrolled through online comments, harsh words, cruel jokes, and wild accusations. For a man who had given so much, the world suddenly felt ungrateful. He closed his laptop, leaned back, and whispered to himself, "Maybe I've become the villain in my own story." He thought about the early days, the small office in Albuquerque, the sleepless nights writing code, the excitement of building something no one else could imagine. Back then, it was all about possibility. He didn't care about fame, power, or wealth. It was about creating something meaningful. But now, decades later, all his success seemed like a double-edged sword. Every move was questioned, every decision twisted. He was no longer the hero, he was the symbol of everything people distrusted about technology and power. Still, Gates didn't stop. He couldn't. Deep down, he knew his purpose wasn't about public approval, it was about legacy. "You don't change the world by being liked," he once told a journalist. But saying it and living it were two different things. Being hated, being truly misunderstood, that was a pain even billions couldn't erase. So he decided to disappear for a while. No cameras. No interviews. Just silence. For 7 days, he went completely offline. No phone, no meetings, no team. He rented a small cabin near the edge of a vast forest in the Pacific Northwest. It was simple. A bed, a desk, a few books, and his thoughts. For the first time in years, he woke up to the sound of birds instead of emails. He brewed coffee on a small stove and stared out at the fog-covered trees. The quiet was strange, almost uncomfortable. His mind, trained to analyze and solve problems, had nowhere to focus. But slowly, as the days passed, something changed. He started writing, not code, not plans, but thoughts. Page after page filled with reflections about life, humanity, and purpose. He wrote about how innovation was never about money, but about curiosity. He wrote about how people had stopped asking, why, and started asking, what's in it for me? He wrote about loneliness, not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being misunderstood. By the 5th day, Gates realized something profound. He didn't need the world's validation. He didn't need everyone to understand him. The truth was simple. Greatness often walks alone. Every visionary, every dreamer, every builder, they all face moments when the world pushes back. The path to changing humanity isn't paved with applause. It's paved with doubt, criticism, and solitude. When he returned from that retreat, he was quieter but stronger. His team noticed it first. He spoke less, listened more. He stopped reacting to the noise online. When reporters asked about the rumors, he smiled gently and said, "History is written slowly. Let's wait and see who's remembered for doing good." And that became his silent mantra. While others argued on screens, Gates doubled down on his work. He funded clean energy projects, supported scientists fighting climate change, and continued his mission to eradicate diseases. His actions spoke louder than headlines. Years later, when people began to see the results, when malaria rates dropped, when schools in poor countries got access to technology, when clean energy innovations started changing lives, many of those same critics began to realize the man they doubted never stopped trying to make the world better. There's a particular photo of Gates taken during that period, sitting alone on a bench overlooking the lake near his house. He's wearing a plain sweater, no luxury watch, no media entourage. Just him, the water, and the setting sun. It's a picture that says everything his words couldn't. That being alone isn't always a curse. Sometimes it's the price of vision. Bill Gates didn't fight the world with anger. He didn't try to prove his worth through arguments. He fought quietly, through persistence, through action, through compassion. That's what made him powerful. In the end, maybe that's what alone against the world really means. Standing for what's right, even when no one stands with you. It's not loneliness, it's leadership. As he once said to a young student during a talk, if everyone agrees with you, you're probably not doing anything important. Bill Gates remains one of the most influential figures of our time, not because he was perfect, but because he refused to let the world's misunderstandings stop him from doing what he believed was right. And in that quiet defiance, he found his peace. He may have walked alone, but he never walked aimlessly. His path was clear. His mission was bigger than his critics. His story, in the end, wasn't about wealth or power, it was about endurance, faith, and purpose. Today, when you hear his name, don't just think of Microsoft, billions, or business. Think of a man who stood alone, misunderstood, and still chose to give because he believed in something larger than himself. Bill Gates, the man who faced the noise, the doubt, the hate, and still kept building a better world, reminds us all of one timeless truth. Sometimes, the greatest battles are fought in silence.